So what kind of topic shall we do today? Something like one and different. We will see. We will see. Okay. I didn't see that people joined. I thought only Chaviji was here. That's why I sent a message on the WhatsApp group. Okay, sorry. Welcome everyone. So what kind of topic shall we review today? Okay, let me decide.
For me, also a definition and definiendum would be helpful
Okay,
because I'm very unsure still.
yes, okay. Yes, I wanted to enter, into the difference between triply qualified substantial existent and substantial existent, but we will do that one of the next times. Yeah. Okay. So then it follows that, well, I guess that you don't know the definition of definition.
The reason is not established.
Okay, it follows that you know the definition of definition.
A triply qualified substantial existent.
Okay, it follows that the subject triply qualified substantial existent is the definition of definition.
Except.
Okay, so it follows you can describe the three qualifications. Of the triply qualified substantial existent.
Sure. It has to be known in general, generally renowned.
Yes.
It has to be established by its instances, no illustrations.
Illustrations.
The last one I don't know.
It is the definition of only one definiendum and nothing else. Yeah? Okay. So it follows that in general, if in general it is a definition, it is established on its illustrations and it's defining only one definiendum and nothing else. There are necessarily the three three qualifications of the triply qualified substantial existence.
Except.
Okay, very good. And it follows you know the definition of definiendum.
A triply qualified imputed existent.
Okay, it follows that the subject, the triply qualified imputed existent is the definition of definiendum.
Except.
Okay, so then you can posit the three qualifications.
In general, it is a definiendum. It is established on its illustrations, and it is defined by nothing other than its own definition.
Yes, it follows that if in general it is a definiendum and it is established on its illustrations and it is defined by only one definition and nothing else, then there are necessarily the three qualifications of triply qualified imputed existent. Very good, fantastic. So then you can posit the difference between among contradiction, equivalent 3P and 4P. You can posit the difference between definiendum and definition.
I think they are contradictory.
Oh, contradictory. Everybody agrees? Contradictory. Okay, so okay. So it follows that the subject, the two definiendum and definition are contradictory.
Except.
They are contradictory because?
If it is a definition, it's necessarily not a definiendum. And if it is a definiendum, it's necessarily not a definition.
Yeah, so it follows that the subject definition is not a definiendum.
Mm, why? I have to say why.
Okay, it follows that the subject definition is a definiendum.
Except
Okay, it is a definiendum because?
because it has a definition.
Okay, so it follows that if it has a definition, it's necessarily a definiendum.
Except.
Okay, very good. So it follows that the subject, yeah, they are contradictory, yeah? Very good. So it follows that the subject, the two, hot and burning and fire, are contradictory.
Mm.
Ravila says yes.
No, why? Why?
Okay, it follows that the subject, the two, hot and burning and fire, are not contradictory.
Except
They are not contradictory because?
because they're equivalent.
Okay, it follows that if they are equivalent, they are necessarily not contradictory.
Except.
Okay, very good. So it follows that the subject, the two, the definiendum of hot and burning and the definition of fire are contradictory.
No, why?
Can you
Okay.
repeat that one more time, please?
Yes. It follows that the subject, the two, the definiendum of hot and burning and the definition of fire are contradictory. Zigrula, you said why?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it follows that the subject, the two, definiendum and definition are not contradictory.
Except.
Oh, we just said we
Yeah,
just
I changed my opinion. No, actually, maybe I should think about it again.
okay. Okay. I'm very convincing. Or maybe confusing. Yeah, Paravila. No? Okay, yes, you said yes, I'm very confusing. Okay, so it follows the subject, the two, the triply qualified whatever, and the triply qualified whatever are not contradictory. So the triply qualified substantial existent and the triply
Oh, no,
qualified.
no, no. Actually, they are contradictory. I made the same mistake as on Monday because
Okay.
definition is not a definition. Okay.
Because what?
Definition is not a definition
Yes, I accept. Okay, definition is not a definition because?
because it's a definiendum.
Okay, so it's a if it is a definiendum, it's necessarily not a definition.
Except.
Okay, okay. So then I ask again this question. It follows that you know the difference between the two, the definiendum of hot and burning and the definition of fire among contradictory equivalent 3p, 4p, maybe 5p.
The subject, the two, the definiendum, hot and burning, and definition, fire.
The definiendum of hot and burning, yeah? Because if we say the definiendum hot and burning, it is a non-existent, yeah? Because hot and burning is a definition, yeah? But if we said
Oh,
the definiendum of hot and burning, yeah? Sorry, my broken English.
no, no, and the definition of fire. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Are equivalent.
Equivalent, okay. Who says the same? Who says contradictory, 3P, 4P? Yeah, the definition of fire and the definition of hot and burning.
Contradictory.
Contradictory. Okay.
It will be equivalent.
Oh,
Same.
two members in the equivalent club. Okay. So, okay. Okay. Contradictory for Zingruna. Then who would say 3P and 4P? C'est un moment là, maybe 8P. Okay. So, okay. So if we say that the subject, the two definiendum and definition are contradictory, then the subject, the two, the definiendum of hot and burning and the definition of fire have to be contradictory. But whatever is that, whatever is that cannot be contradictory. Because in the whole multiverse, what is the definiendum of hot and burning?
Fire.
Fire. And in the whole multiverse, what is the definition of fire?
Hot and burning.
Yes. So if it is the definition of fire, and if it is the definiendum of hot and burning, they are necessarily not contradictory. They are necessarily equivalent. But the subject, the two, the definiendum and the definition are necessarily contradictory. Because if it is the triply qualified substantial existent, it cannot be the triply qualified imputed existent. And if it is the triply qualified imputed existent, it cannot be the triply qualified substantial existent, yeah? So that's the same process as we had before, yeah? Januar is neutral, but if it is Januar, it's not necessarily neutral. Yeah, definition is necessarily not a definition, but if it is a definition, it's necessarily a definition.
Yes, but in this instance, you brought up the idea of fire. So fire is hot and burning is the definition of, oh no, sorry. What? Fire is the definition. No? Hot and
Fire,
burning is the definition of fire.
yes.
Yes. Yeah. So we brought in an instance where the definition of fire is hot and burning, and the definiendum of hot and burning is fire. So why are they not equivalent? We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about fire.
Yeah, that's why we need to be very precise in the way we formulate things, because if we say the subject, yeah, the definition of fire, it is not hot and burning.
What is it?
The definition of fire is permanent, because definition is permanent.
Yeah, but you said the subject definition of fire.
Yes.
If it was definition, subject definition, we would say permanent. But you've said now you've brought in an instance of fire, subject definition of fire. Haven't we gone into the level that is not?
It's the same process as we said with Januar. The subject definition of fire is necessarily not fire, but if it is the definition of fire, it's necessarily fire because it is hot and burning. Yeah, definition is like, you know, like there are many definitions which are permanent and many definitions which are impermanent. So definition itself is
Permanent.
Permanent. Like non-organic rice. Yeah, the non-organic rice always wins. Yeah, the battle. Because as soon as we say definition or definiendum, it's a conceptual abstraction. Yeah. But whatever is that, is not necessarily a conceptual abstraction. Yeah? If we say the definition of fire on one side, then it is permanent. But if we say, if it is the definition of fire, what is that? What is the definition of fire?
Hot and burning. And
Yes,
impermanent.
it's necessarily impermanent. So the subject definition of fire is permanent, but whatever is that is necessarily not permanent. It's necessarily impermanent because it is hot and burning. Yeah. It's
I
like
understand it for the moment, but it is so impermanent.
yes, yes. If we say yes, the same. If we say the subject, the definiendum impermanent, the subject, the definiendum impermanent, it is permanent. But whatever is that, it's necessarily impermanent because it is impermanent itself. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So that's why here, if we say the definition of fire and the definiendum of hot and burning, they are necessarily contradictory. But if it is the definiendum of hot and burning, what is that? It is fire. Eh? And if it is the definition of fire, what is that? It is hot and burning. Then they are necessarily not contradictory, they are equivalent. Yeah, that's always the same process. The subject, the thing in itself can be impermanent or permanent and so on, but whatever is that is not necessarily, permanent or impermanent. Like one with pot. One with pot is permanent because one is permanent. Yeah, so you have a handful of non-organic rice and you put it with pot, which is organic rice. One is permanent. You put pot, so one with pot, then the non-organic rice wins. Yeah, so the permanent phenomenon wins. So one with pot is permanent because one is permanent. Yeah, but whatever is that, it's necessarily not permanent because whatever in the multiverse is one with pot, just pot. And pot is necessarily impermanent. Yeah. Okay, very good. So it follows that you can posit the definition of existent.
That which is known by a valid cognition.
Okay, it follows that the subject observed by valid cognition is the definition of existent.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that if it is observed by valid cognition, it's necessarily existent.
Except.
Okay, and it follows that if it is existent, it's necessarily observed by valid cognition.
Except.
So one definition and one definiendum are necessarily equivalent. One definition and and the corresponding definition, yeah, they are equivalent. Yeah? If it is hot and burning, it's necessarily fire. If it's fire, it's necessarily hot and burning. If it's existent, it's necessarily observed by valid cognition. If it is observed by valid cognition, it's necessarily existent. Yeah. Do you agree with that? Okay, very good. Now, if we say the subject, the definiendum of observed by valid cognition and the definition of existent, they are equivalent or contradictory?
Contradictory.
Yes, they are contradictory because?
Because if it is the definition of existence, it's necessarily not the, what's the definiendum, that which is able to, no, sorry, that which is observed by valid cognition.
Yes, exactly, because definition and definiendum are contradictory anyway. Yeah.
They are different and they don't have a common base.
Yes, exactly. They are different and they have no common base. Very good. Very good. Okay. So yeah, that's the way we process. Yeah, the thought consciousness is able to ascertain a functioning thing or a permanent phenomenon, but still the appearing object with that thought consciousness has to be permanent. Yeah, if we say definition, definition, and so on, they are the appearing objects to thought consciousness. So they are necessarily permanent. But whatever is that, you know, whatever the thought consciousness is ascertaining, is engaging with, it's not necessarily permanent. Yeah. I hope it's more clear.
It's clear, but how do you separate out thought consciousness from the word fire? As soon as you see a fire, your thought consciousness will associate it with the hot and burning. So how do you know, oh, what I'm thinking is permanent, but what I'm seeing is impermanent? Is that what we're saying?
So we could say that, you know, thought consciousness can ascertain impermanent phenomena and permanent phenomena. Anyway, because you can think about everything in the universe. You can think about uncompounded space. You can think about cup. You can think about definition.
But at the same time,
yes. So at the same time, you have an appearing object of your thought consciousness, which is necessarily permanent, but the referent of that meaning generality is not necessarily permanent. You know, if you think about your cup, your favorite cup, then the appearing object of your thought consciousness is the meaning generality of cup. And this is permanent. But whatever your thought consciousness is ascertaining, yeah, is engaging with, yeah, the object of engagement of the conceived object or the referent object of your thought consciousness is necessarily impermanent. In this case, yeah, for the thought consciousness apprehending cup. Yeah. Okay.
so are we, when we are formulating this sentence, we are actually separating the referent? Is that what we are trying to do? That is where I'm slipping, is that my
Yes.
referent is getting combined with the subject.
Yes, in one sense. Yeah, not always, because if we say, okay, it follows that the subject, the definiendum of momentary, yeah, which is what is the definiendum of momentary?
Impermanent.
Impermanent.
Impermanent. Yeah. If we say the subject, the definiendum of momentary, we necessarily have as the referent object of the thought consciousness, we necessarily we speak about something which is permanent. Yeah. But whatever is that is necessarily impermanent. Yeah. Like yeah.
So
Yeah.
is
Maybe the way to clarify that is to debate a lot on those points, because the more you formulate it yourself, the more it makes it clear in your mind, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Sorry?
I wanted to ask, what is that consciousness which ascertains the object without the meaning generality? So is there a consciousness like that or separate from the thought consciousness?
If if there is no meaning generality, then in this case we can speak about a non-conceptual mind. Yeah. Like yeah. The Acharya Dharmakirti would say so. Sewa no Chen Lo Grand Deni de la Tome de. He would say so. He would say if there is the clear appearance to a mind, then the clear appearance means it's a non-conceptual mind.
And whatever that consciousness sees is the ultimate reality, right? No.
Now, whatever, sorry?
Whatever that consciousness ascertains is the ultimate reality, like without the meaning generality.
Oh, that would be difficult to say so, because, you know, like, yeah, you know, you can have the clear appearance of a non-existent. Yeah, like if you see a rope on the ground and it's a bit dark and so on, Your eye consciousness could be deceived. Yeah, we have the feeling that we see a snake, but it's just a rope. Still, it's non-conceptual. Yeah, so it's the clear appearance of a non-existent. There is no snake on the place of the rope. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's why Acharya Dignaga said, you know, Topa Donde Musumo. He said, if it is free from conceptualization, it's necessarily a direct perception. Ngunsumo. But after that, you know, Acharya Dharmakirti said, okay, still we can have the clear appearance of a non-existent, like when we see a mirage and so on. Yeah. So he said the definition of direct perception is much more than that. Yes, it is free from conceptualization, but it has to be also non-mistaken. Yeah. Topa donde matrueripa. Topa donde matrueripa. Yeah. Okay.
But then
So
the snake is not an object of the direct perception,
exactly, we can say that the
of a
appearance.
valid direct perception.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yes,
We,
sir.
yes, we could say that the even the snake, it's a non-existent, so it cannot appear. Yeah, non-existent cannot appear, but the appearance of the non-existent can appear. Because the appearance of a non-existent is existent. Like when we dream, yeah, you have so many appearances coming in your mind. Yeah, those appearances necessarily exist, otherwise we could not remember that we dreamt. So the appearance itself is existent, but what it shows is a non-existent. Yeah, like the mirage exists, but the water on the place of the mirage doesn't exist. Yeah.
And the mirage, is it object to direct perception or to conceptual?
Yeah, if we say that the mirage is the appearance of water, the clear appearance of a non-existent, then we can say it's an appearance to a direct perception because it's impermanent. The appearance has to be impermanent.
But
Yeah,
it's
you have
not the
some.
appearing object.
Yeah, we can say it is the appearing object because to a direct perception because it is impermanent, and as we said, the appearance itself exists.
But it's mistaken.
Yes, because what it shows doesn't exist.
Mm.
So that's why the Prasangika would say, if it is a mind, it's necessarily a valid cognition with regard to the appearance. They are so clever. Because we can remember, we can say, oh, I saw a snake. So it was mistaken. Yeah. So I saw the appearance of the snake. So if we can remember, it's a subsequent cognition. And a subsequent cognition can always exist when there is a valid cognition in the first place. Okay, so maybe we will debate about that
Right.
later.
But in the case of the snake, there was no valid direct perception in the first place.
Exactly, that's why the Sotrantika would say, no, it was a wrong, non-conceptual mind, a wrong cognition which is non-conceptual. They would say it's a wrong sensory mind. Yeah, they wouldn't. Most of the time, you know, if we follow Yonzin Purbuchak, they would not even call that a direct perception. Because the direct perception is necessarily non-mistaken, yeah, and the definition that we learn with the Yongzin Purbuchak. He said topa dondeshi matrueripa. The definition of a direct perception is cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, yeah. So if it is mistaken, we cannot call it direct perception. Yeah. But in some other textbooks, like the textbooks like maybe in Vinay Damdul will use, yeah, he would say that direct perception can just mean a mind which is free from conceptualization. So in this case, the appearance, the clear appearance of a non-existent, then we can call that mind a direct perception, but not a direct valid perception. For Yongzin Purbuchak, direct valid perception means direct perception. Okay. Okay, so that's why when if it is mistaken, for using Buddhist, we cannot call it direct perception. We can call it a non-conceptual wrong cognition. Yeah, okay. Very good. Very good. So if we know a little bit about the definitions, we are not too much stuck with the terminology. But yeah, it can be tricky sometimes. Okay, very good. So, okay. So it follows that the subject impermanent is momentary.
Except
It is momentary because?
it's the definition of impermanence.
Yes, because it is defined. Yeah, impermanent is defined as being momentary. Yeah? Okay, very good. Very good. So it follows that the subject fire is hot and burning.
Except
Yes, everybody agrees. Okay, the subject fire is hot and burning because? Because it's not cold.
Because it is a definition of fire of fire.
Yes, because the subject hot and burning is the definition of fire. It follows that if the subject hot and burning is the definition of fire, it's necessarily fire.
except
Yes, because we just speak about hot and burning. Hot and burning, that entity which is the set of characteristics of fire. We are not saying the definition of fire or we are just saying hot and burning. Yeah.
But we can say, I can say, oh, it's hot and burning today. I'm talking about the weather. The reference
Yes.
is the weather. But why? So is it because of a specific school that we have said if it is hot and burning, it is a definition, and the definition will always be fire. It'll never be weather. It'll never be water or anything else.
Yes, because as you know, definition and its definiendum, they share the eight doors of perversion. Yeah? If it is the one, it's necessarily the other, and so on. So if we say that today, it follows that the subject today is hot and burning, so it follows that the subject today is fire. Today, which is time, which is a NACP, how to say, non-associated, how to say, yes, non-associated compositional factor or phenomenon. Okay, it follows that the subject, an impermanent functioning thing, which is not form and not consciousness, can be form because fire is form. So many debates could follow like this, yeah. So we can say that today, on one side, it is hot. Yeah, the weather today on one side is hot and on the other side is burning, but it's not hot and burning.
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
is, I was trying to understand because you said I'm stuck on this, the referent, or like, what are we actually talking about? And we have to make sure that we are speaking about the same thing before we start the debate. Otherwise, you could be referring to the weather, and I could be
Yes,
referring to fire.
exactly. Like the the boiling water in my cup. It follows it is fire. It follows that water is fire because it is hot and burning. What would you say? Accept.
I
The
would say
reason is not
why.
established. Yeah, because it's a three-part consequence. Yeah. So accept, the reason is not established, no perversion, or the perversion is opposite.
Can you
Well, how
repeat?
do I know that this is a three-part consequence? Sorry.
Yeah, it follows that the subject, the boiling water in my cup, is fire because it is hot and burning. If we say because, we give a reason. So it's that's the third part, yeah, the reason.
Got it, got it.
The reason is not established.
Oh, it follows that the subject, the boiling water in my cup, is not hot and burning.
Except
So it follows that it is not hot.
it is hot and it is burning, but it's not hot
Accept
and
or why?
burning.
Accept
Okay.
or why?
It's not hot. Why?
Oh, so it follows that
Oh, no, it's not hot except. No, it's why? It's hot. Sorry.
You can say XY, accept and Y.
Can you repeat?
So it follows that the subject, the boiling water in my cup, is not hot.
Why?
So it follows it is hot.
Accept.
Okay, and it follows that the subject in the boiling water in my cup is not burning.
Accept. Not accept.
Oh, if you put your finger in the boiling water in my cup, it will be burned.
Depends on the definition of burning.
Yeah, like then you have some pain, you know, like some kind of you know, there is a scientific way to express that, the combustion of the free radicals, something like this in physics.
For Laws, fire is not burning because it doesn't have pain in its physical awareness.
But my skin doesn't have pain. My skin is just matter, and pain is feeling. Feeling is a mental factor. Okay. Okay. So yes, some debates like this, yeah. So we could say, okay, on one side it is hot, on the other side it's burning, but it's not hot and burning. Otherwise it would be water, yeah? Yeah. Okay, very good. Very good. So yes, it follows that you know the difference between definiendum and fire. That's easy. Eh? Yes, 4p, 5p.
No, they're contradictory. No, I was raising my hand.
Contradictory. Okay, so it follows that the subject fire is not a definiendum. So I could say the subject, okay, wood fire. Wood fire is not a definiendum because it is fire.
Wood fire is not a definiendum.
So it follows that the subject wood fire is not defined.
The subject of wood fire is a collection of things.
This is not my question.
No, okay. What is the question?
It follows that the subject wood fire is not defined.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that the subject wood, hot and burning is not the definition of wood fire.
What are my options to answer? No, it's not.
Okay, it's not. Okay. Okay, so it follows that the subject fire in the garden. The subject fire in the garden is a common base between definiendum and fire.
It is a fire. Except.
Okay, so it
No,
follows that
no. Sorry, I cannot accept. Because the subject definiendum is permanent and the subject fire is impermanent. They are therefore contradictory. So subject fire in the garden is an impermanent instance
Yes.
of something. It is not a
Yes.
definiendum.
Yeah, I see where the issue comes from, yeah, because yes, definiendum is permanent, yeah. But when we compare definiendum and fire, we are checking if we find common base, yeah. So a common base is something which would be fire, and would be a definiendum.
But you said the subject definiendum.
Yeah, so if we compare definiendum and fire, we are checking, do we find something which is a definiendum and which is fire? Yeah, do we find a common base?
I would have to say then subject definiendum of fire. Because if you said subject definiendum, you have gone to a generality, which I cannot, which is permanent.
Yes, exactly. Definiendum is a permanent generality. But if it is an instance of that, it's not necessarily permanent.
Except.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so it follows that the subject fire is an instance of definiendum,
Except.
and it is still impermanent.
Except.
Okay, so yes, exactly. When we compare definiendum, which is a permanent generality, you're perfectly right, and fire, which is an impermanent definiendum, yeah. So we are checking it. Do we find a common base? Can we find something which is fire and which is a definiendum? So if it is a definiendum, is it necessarily permanent? No, exactly.
It is a definiendum. It is not the
Yes.
definiendum. So I think that is the
Exactly.
difference there then.
Exactly.
Subject, a definiendum, and fire are both
Yes.
impermanent, correct? Equivalent. Could they be equivalent?
Sorry.
No, they can't be equivalent. No, they can't be equivalent. There's a relationship there.
So the relationship between definiendum and fire, is it contradictory, equivalent, 3P, 4P?
OP.
4P. Okay. Very clever. I know why. I was mistaken when I thought 3P when I was asking the question. Now I see why Ziegler is more clever than me. Yeah, 4P. Very good, yes. So
Why is it 4P? I thought 3P. Sorry.
so then we can debate. It follows that you can posit the common base between the two, definiendum and fire.
Fire. For example, the subject fire.
Yes, or fire in the forest, fire in the garden. It's more specific, but fire is fire. Yeah, that's true. But we can say a more specific instance of fire if you wish. That's can be a more concrete. That's possible as well. Okay, but fire is not wrong. Yeah. Okay, so it follows that the subject fire is fire.
Except.
It's fire because it is fire.
Exactly.
So if we say like this, it follows that the subject fire is fire because it is fire. Chanela Mashedrup in Serame would say it's a madrup etensik, a non-established reason, madrup etensik.
It's fire because it's hot and burning.
Yes, okay, very good. Very good. But even in that case, yeah, Chanela Mashidru would say it follows that the subject fire is fire because it is hot and burning. It would say madrup etensik. He would say it's a non-established reason because there is no difference between the subject and the predicate. That's why we recommend to give a specific instance of fire. Then the syllogism goes well. Yeah, it follows that
Okay,
the
fire in the garden.
yes. It follows that the subject, fire in the garden is fire because it is hot and burning. That's a perfect syllogism because there is a minimalist difference between the subject and the predicate and the reason. Yeah. Okay, very good. So, okay, and it is a definiendum. The subject fire in the garden is a definiendum.
Except.
Okay, it's a definiendum because
It has a definition.
okay, it follows that if it has a definition, it's necessarily a definiendum.
Except.
Okay, posit the definition of fire in the garden.
Hot and burning in the garden.
Yes, it follows that the subject hot and burning in the garden is the definition of fire in the garden.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that you can posit a definiendum which is not fire because you said 4P.
For example, water.
Water, it follows that the subject boiling water, which is hot and burning, is not fire. No, I'm joking.
Except.
And it is a definiendum.
Boiling water. It is
Uh,
also definiendum.
water which is hot and burning.
No, water which is hot and burning is not a definiendum.
Yes, because
Because it's a non-existent.
yes, wow, fantastic, yeah. Water which is fire doesn't exist, yeah. Yeah, so water which is hot and burning doesn't exist. Okay, very good. Everybody follows? Yeah, very funny debates. Okay, so it follows that the subject water is a definiendum and water is not fire. Okay, so now it follows you can posit an illustration of fire which is not a definiendum.
They said fire in the garden and fire in the forest.
Okay. It follows that the subject fire in the garden and the fire in the forest are not definiendums.
Except
Oh, they are not definiendums. They have no definitions.
they said both, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the set of the two, yeah, is not a definiendum because there is no definition of the set of the two. Very good. Very good. We could say hot and burning.
Oh,
Yeah. I thought you thought about that. Okay. What is it? The subject hot and burning is fire,
except,
but it is not a definiendum.
except.
Yes. Okay, but the subject, the set of the two, yeah, the set of the two, fire in the forest and fire in the garden, it works as well. Yeah, if we say the set, yeah, very good. Okay, so because you said 4P, you can posit an illustration of something among existent, among phenomena, not Hounds of the Rabbit, that is not a definiendum and is not fire.
The bulbous flat-based, how do you say, thing that is able to hold water.
Yes, very good. Yeah. The bulbous flat base able to hold water. Yeah, it follows it is not a definiendum.
Except
It is not a definiendum because
because it's a definition.
it follows that if it is a definition, it's necessarily not a definiendum.
Except,
The subject definition is not a definition.
except.
It follows that the subject, the definition of fire is not a definition.
Except.
Yes. Very good. And flat base, bulbous flat base able to hold water, it follows it is not fire.
Except.
Yes, we could say the definition of fire. The subject definition of fire is not fire. And is not a it is a definiendum, sorry. So the the subject the triply qualified substantial existence of fire. Yeah. The subject, the triply qualified substantial existence of fire, it follows it is not fire.
Except.
Okay, it is not fire because
It's the definition of fire.
we could say because it's permanent, because it's a conceptual abstraction, because it's the appearing objective thought consciousness. But your answer is correct, yeah? Okay, so it follows that the subject, the triply qualified substantial existence of fire is not a definiendum.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, it follows that the subject, the triply qualified substantial existence of fire is not a definiendum.
Except.
It is
Yeah,
not
except. Because it's a definition.
Yeah, because it's a definition of what?
Of the definition of, it's the definition of the definition of fire.
Yes, it is the definition of the definition of fire. Very good. So 4P between what and what?
Fire and definiendum.
Yes, very good. Yeah, everybody follows? Very good. Yes. Okay. So do we still have time? Do you have any question with regard to what we've done today and maybe earlier? Or we can just practice a little bit. Okay. So, okay. Okay, so now we said definiendum and fire. So now if we compare, it follows that you can posit the difference between, okay, checking something. Okay, one and different. Yeah, that's easy. One and different. First, you can posit among contradictory equivalent 3p, 4p, the difference between the subject, the two, one and different.
Contradictory.
Contradictory, not sure.
No, it is contradictory.
Yeah, is it clear for everyone? One and different. Yeah, you remember we had the cloud existent, and it can be divided into two, permanent or impermanent, or another way to divide them, one and different, yeah? Yeah, if it exists, it has to be one or different. Yeah? Is it clear for everyone? Yeah? Okay, very good. Okay. So now you can posit the difference between existent and different from existent. Yeah, I think we need to do a lot of debates around that. Yeah, maybe also on the Mondays, because that's the very, very basics of the debates. Yeah, how we compare things like this. Yeah? So existent and different from existent.
PP.
3P, faut cet moment-là.
Also
Yeah,
3p.
3P, singular as well. Okay, 3P. Then, Apollinaire.
Well, I'm not clear on this topic, so maybe I'm a
Yes,
bit confused. Yes.
yes. You remember the definition of different?
I wrote down somewhere. I can't find. Different is hmm, different is something that is diverse.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is something like it has to be to be a phenomenon, yeah. It has to exist, yeah, because it's
Yes.
one main division of existent, yeah. So we have to include existent into that definition, yeah. So diverse phenomena, yeah, diverse phenomena, and the definition of one.
The phenomena
Literally
is not diverse.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's opposite of diverse, different.
yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, if we say that it is the opposite of being different, oh, we could have some crunchy debates. Okay. Okay, so I will drop it. Okay. But maybe next time we'll try to debate about that. Yeah. The opposite of being different and one. Ah, okay. So now we have different and one. Okay, one is a phenomenon which is not diverse. It's not diverse in meaning and it's not diverse in name. Yeah, it's just one for the thought consciousness, like pot. Pot is just isolated from everything else. It's just one. But can we say that the subject horn of the rabbit is one? No, c'est un moment. The subject horn of the rabbit is not one because it is many.
Because it's a non-existent.
Yes, it follows that if it doesn't exist, it cannot be a phenomenon which is not diverse. Yeah, okay, very good. And diverse phenomena are necessarily existent, are necessarily phenomena. Yeah, okay, very good. So now if we compare existent and different from existent. Mm. So we have to check, do we find any common base between existent, so it has to exist, and it exists, and it is not one with existent. So it means it is not existent itself. Yeah, a phenomenon can exist without being existent itself. What could it be?
Pot,
Pot. The subject pot, it follows that it exists.
except,
You're sure?
yeah,
Yes. Okay, and it follows that the subject pot is different from existent.
except
It is different from existent because?
it's an instance of existent.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice, very elegant reply. Wow, very nice. Yeah. If it is an instance of existent, it's necessarily different from existent. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Okay. The other way around doesn't it is not possible. Yeah. If it is different from existent, it's not necessarily an instance of existent.
Yeah.
Yeah, for instance, what is different from existent? That is not an instance of existent.
Existent?
Or we could say like the definition of existent, like observed by valid cognition. Yeah, observed by valid cognition is existent, and it is different from existent. But it's not an instance of existence because it's coextensive, it's equivalent with existence. Very good. But your answer is perfect, Sitamomola. Yeah, if it is an instance of existence, it's necessarily different from existent. Very good. So pot is existent and is different from existent. Everybody agrees? Yeah. Apollinola, do you agree? Maybe you would think he tries to get us nuts. Yeah, pot, yeah, the subject pot or cup. Cup exists, but it is not one with existence because what is one with existence in the whole universe?
Existent.
Exactly, yeah. So only existent is one with existence, yeah. So everything else that exists and is not existent itself has to be different from existent, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
very good. Fantastic. So pot is a common base between existent and different from existent. So now, what is the perversion? If we say 3P, like between red cup and cup, Yeah, if we say 3p, then we can posit the perversion. If it is a red cup, it's necessarily a cup. If it is a cup, it's not necessarily a red cup, yeah? So now existent and different from existent, how does it work?
If it is different from existent, it's necessarily existent.
But if it is existent, it's not necessarily different from existent.
Except.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody agrees? If it is different from existent, it's necessarily a phenomenon or existent because it is a diverse phenomenon from existent. So if it is different from existent, it has to exist. Yeah? Are you sure? Everybody is sure? Okay. Yes, if it is different from existent, it has to exist because it has to be a diverse phenomenon from existent. Yeah? Okay. But if it is existent, it's not necessarily different from existent. Yeah, posit an illustration.
Existent itself.
Existent. Yeah, the subject existent exists. Yeah, it follows that the subject existent is an existent because it is an existent. So it follows that the subject existent exists because
It's observed by a valid cognition.
yeah, it follows that if it is observed by valid cognition, it's necessarily existent.
Except.
Okay, and follows that the subject existent is not different from existent.
Except.
Okay, it is not different from existent because
Because it's one with existent.
yes, it follows that if it is one with existent, it's necessarily not different from existent.
Except.
Very good. So now it follows that you can posit something which is not existent and not different from existent.
One of a rabbit.
Yeah, the subject horn of the rabbit, it follows it doesn't exist.
Except.
Okay, it doesn't exist because
Because it's not observed by valid cognition.
it follows that if it is not observed by valid cognition, it's necessarily non-existent.
Except.
So it follows that the subject not observed by valid cognition is the definition of non-existent.
Why?
Okay. Very good. It is not, yeah, because the definition has to exist. Okay, very good. And the subject horn of the rabbit is not different from existent.
Except.
So it follows it is one with existent.
Why?
Okay. It follows it is not one with existent.
Except.
And it is not different from existent.
Except.
Okay, because?
Because it's not a phenomenon.
Yes, very good. If it's not a phenomenon, it can not be a phenomenon which is not diverse or diverse phenomenon anyway. Very good. So 3P. Wow, fantastic. Yeah. Everybody agrees? Existent and different from existent. Yeah. Okay, very good. So maybe for next time, we can check. Maybe for next time, for Monday, for people who want to join on Monday, or for next Wednesday, we check among existent and between the two. Yeah, it follows, you know, the difference between the two, existent and contradictory with existent. Wow, crazy. Crazy. Yes. So for next time, and yes. So we had questions about selflessness and, you know, like emptiness and pot and so on. Yeah. The two truths are necessarily contradictory. Yeah. With regard to any kind of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah. Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, Madhyamaka, they all agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. The two truths are necessarily contradictory. Yeah. Okay. Very good. And His Holiness says in one teaching on the two truths with regard to the four schools. You can find that in one book, which is compiled by Rajiv Mehrotra. I need to check the title. Yeah, in Tibetan is Chamse Rintang. Chamse Rintang. It's a very beautiful book. And in the end, you find a chapter about the two truths. And His Holiness says for the Mahayana schools, the two truths are one entity, necessarily. Yeah, so they are one entity, but they are necessarily contradictory. Yeah. Okay. Okay, like red, the color red and cup. The cup and its color are necessarily contradictory. Yeah. So that's why we can say that the subject cup and selflessness are contradictory. But the subject cup and selfless, how many points? Trippy for
Or
Paravida.
P without anything that is neither.
Yes, there is nothing which is not selfless. Yeah, exactly. If it exists or not, it has to be empty of self. So it has to be selfless. Yeah. Okay. So yes, between cup and selfless, then we find 3P without anything being neither. Yeah? If it is cup,
3P
it's
or
not.
4P, sorry.
I think it depends on the configuration, but in this case, yeah, I would say 3P without anything being neither, because if it's cup, it's necessarily selfless, but if it is selfless, it's not necessarily cup. It can be a pot, it can be non-existent and so on. Yeah? But you have nothing which is none of them. Because
Why is horn or like rabbit? Why is an imagination not? Why does it still be selfless?
yeah, because horned rabbit doesn't exist, yeah. So it cannot be a self and it cannot belong to any self. So that's why it is selfless. Yeah, we can say it is not red. Yeah, the subject horned rabbit is necessarily redless.
Okay.
Because it is not red. Yes, very good. So yes, in usually in Tibetan we would just say dharme. Yes. So that's why it can be confusing in the Western languages. Yeah. Like if we say selflessness and cup, yeah, they are contradictory because selflessness is a conventional truth for the Sautrantika because it's permanent. And cup is impermanent, so it's an ultimate truth. Yeah. For the Prasangika, it would be the opposite. Selflessness would be the subtle selflessness would be the ultimate truth, and the cup a conventional truth. But for the Sautrantika, it's the way around. Yeah. If it is impermanent, it's an ultimate truth. Yeah. If it's permanent, it's a conventional truth. So selflessness is a conventional truth, and cup is an ultimate truth. So they are necessarily contradictory. But if we say selfless, then the cup is necessarily a selfless, is necessarily a dharme, because it's not a self. And it's not an object of apprehension of a self, of a self-sufficient substantial self. Yeah? Is it more clear?
But can you repeat the last part?
Yeah, because the cup is empty of being a self, is not a self, is not a personal self, and is not an object of apprehension of a self-sufficient substantial self. So it is a selfless. Yeah. So that's why they say if it exists or not, it has to be selfless. Yeme goro yena dharme imbekya. Yeah, if it exists or non-existent, if it is existent or non-existent, it has to be selfless. Yeah.
So the Sautrantika, they would apply this being or the lack of a self that is self-sufficient, substantially existent. Also,
Yeah.
they apply it to phenomena.
Yes, exactly. But they would not they would not call it the selflessness of the phenomena because they don't accept that. Yeah.
They
Bashika
would say
also
there's no self of the cup is, how do they say, has the
Yeah.
lack of a self.
they would not accept the selflessness of phenomena. They accept only the selflessness of the person. Yeah, because the Buddha and the first will of the Dharma mainly explain the selflessness of the person. So the Vaibhashika and the Sotrantika, which are the main, we could say the main audience of the first will, they would say, okay, if it is a selfless, it's necessarily the selflessness of the person. Even if it is a phenomenon which is selfless, it's still the selflessness of the person of the cup.
So they say the cup is selfless because it's the selflessness of the person of the cup.
Yeah, exactly. Because they would say it's not, because there is no self-sufficient substantial me. There is no self-sufficient substantial object of the, there is no object of a self-substantial, self-sufficient substantial me. Yeah. So
But then they take, basically they take the object possessor, because the object possessor has no self-sufficient substantially existent self. The object it possesses also has no self-sufficient
yes,
substantially existent self.
exactly. And it will be like this up to the Swatantrika. Up to the Swatantrika, they would say, if we speak about this, the emptiness of self-sufficient substantial self, it's necessarily the selflessness of the person. And if it is more subtle than that, it's necessarily the selflessness of the phenomena for the Chittamatra and Swatantrika. But for the Prasangika, they would say the subtle selflessness is emptiness, yeah? So if we speak about the selflessness of a person or the emptiness of the person, that's the selflessness of the person. If we speak about the emptiness of the aggregates, we speak about the selflessness of the phenomena. For the Prasangika, it's easier. But for the others, it's the depth of the object of negation that makes the distinction. If it is a gross one, it's necessarily the selflessness of the person. If it is a subtle one, it's necessarily the selflessness of phenomena. So
But for Sautrantika, the selflessness of person kind of pervades the object.
yes, exactly. For the Sotrantika, yeah.
For the
Sotrantika, exactly, yeah. And for the Vaibhashika as well, yeah. So if it is, yes, they would say, if it is a selflessness, it's necessarily the selflessness of the person, because they don't accept the selflessness of phenomena. For them, phenomena have a self. They exist inherently. They exist truly, and so on, yeah. Yeah. Okay, very good. Yeah, it's a bit tricky, yeah. But if you check in Meditation on Emptiness from Jeffrey Hopkins, around the page 300 or 330, you find some charts. Yeah, the objects of negation, the objects of meditation of the Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha and Bodhisattva and so on. And you find the charts, yeah. And it's much more clearer than what I'm saying now. Meditation on emptiness. I will tell you the page, yeah, on the, maybe I will take a picture and I will send it on the WhatsApp.
I can share the charts.
Oh, very good.
From the Nalanda.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very good. Okay, so then we will dive into that slowly, step by step. You know, don't be too much frightened by those terminologies and so on. But yeah, the main point during the debates in the Sotrantika is to understand what means self-sufficient substantial existence. Yeah, substantial existence. There are so many meanings, and in the big debate from Daniel Perdue, debate in Tibetan Buddhism, at some point he uses the Jebungomang Dura, and he says there is a terminological division into 4. Yeah, but only the 2 last ones are really substantial phenomena. So we will slowly, step by step go into that. Yeah. Then in order to understand what we mean by the emptiness of self-sufficient substantial existence, yeah, that's so important, because even the Prasangika will refute that kind of self. Yeah? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. And you can take some painkillers, and for next time we try to review. Yeah, thank you so much, and for the sake of all the beings as usual. Yeah, thank you so much. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe.